The morning Cari Farver disappeared didn't feel like the beginning of anything extraordinary. It didn't feel like the start of a tragedy or a mystery or a years-long digital haunting that would distort reality for everyone caught in its path. It felt normal, quiet, ordinary, forgettable. Sometimes the most devastating stories begin that way. Not with screaming, not with chaos, but with a simple door closing behind someone who has no idea they are walking into the last hours of their life. Cari was awake early, the soft glow of her laptop reflecting off her glasses as she moved through emails and work files. She was a programmer, sharp, quick, and meticulous, someone who carried both kindness and precision everywhere she went. People remembered her smile before they remembered her job title, but those who worked with her never underestimated her mind. She was the kind of person whose presence lifted a room, and at 37 she was exactly where she wanted to be. Raising her teenage son Max, thriving at work, building stability after years of hard-earned resilience. What Cari didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that a stranger's obsession had already locked onto her like a shadow she couldn't see. That shadow had a name, Shanna Liz Golyar. But that's not where this story begins. It begins with a man named Dave Krupa, standing behind the counter of an Omaha auto shop, tightening bolts on a Ford Explorer for a woman he had never met until that moment. A woman who would later vanish within hours of texting him, "I hate you." A woman whose identity would be stolen, twisted, impersonated, and weaponized for years after her death. Before this case was solved, the world believed Cari Farver was dangerous. A stalker. A villain. A woman unraveling into mania and rage. It took 4 years of terror, tens of thousands of messages, arson, threats, break-ins, and digital torture before the truth finally surfaced. Cari wasn't tormenting anyone. She was already gone, and the real threat was sitting quietly among everyone else, watching the chaos she had created, sending messages in Cari's name even while standing in the same room as her victims. You're watching Unsolved True Crimes, UTC. Take a second now. Before we go deeper, hit subscribe so you don't miss stories just like this one. And tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Cari's life was ordinary only on the surface. She raised Max largely on her own, balancing her commute from the small town of Macedonia, Iowa, with her demanding job in Omaha. The drive was long, an hour each way, but she didn't complain. She found rhythm in routine. She found joy in her son's games, his concerts, his milestones. People who knew her understood one thing. Cari showed up. Always. Her tattoos told quiet stories, an Aztec sun on her back, symbols on her thigh and foot. The one on her foot read, Mother. The people closest to her knew that was her anchor. Nothing, no job, no relationship, no amount of stress, came before Max. So when she vanished, the idea that she simply walked away from him was impossible. But impossibilities mean nothing once a story starts spreading. And Liz wanted that story to spread. Before Liz ever crossed paths with Cari, she had already been trying to force her way deeper into Dave's life. Dave was newly separated, trying to keep things simple. He didn't want to fall into another long-term relationship. He made that clear to Liz. She smiled, nodded, pretended to agree, but inside she was building a certainty. If she couldn't have him exclusively, no one else would have him at all. So when Cari met Dave, first at the repair shop, then later on a dating site, the collision of their lives felt serendipitous. Two single parents. Two people not rushing commitment. Two people who found comfort in each other almost instantly. That alone was enough to trigger Liz's jealousy, but fate handed her something even more dangerous. On the night of Cari and Dave's first date, Liz showed up at Dave's apartment, uninvited, unexpected, and furious, claiming she needed to pick up something she left behind. In the hallway, she and Cari passed one another. 10 seconds. That was all the time Liz needed to identify the woman she believed had stolen what she wanted. 10 seconds to decide that Cari Farver had to disappear. The days after that encounter moved quietly. Cari stayed at Dave's apartment for the week to avoid the long commute. She texted her mother, rearranged Max's schedule, planned her workload. Nothing felt off. Nothing signaled danger. But on November 13th, 2012, Dave left for work around 7 a.m. Cari stayed behind, sitting on his couch with her laptop open. Hours later, the messages started. "We should move in together. Fine. I hate you. I'm seeing someone else. Don't talk to me again. Dave stared at his phone, confused. It didn't sound like her. It didn't feel like her. But people behave strangely sometimes, he thought. Emotions shift. Maybe she changed her mind. Maybe she got scared. Maybe it wasn't his place to question it. When he got home and saw her belongings were gone, he assumed the breakup was real. Days passed. Then weeks. Then the messages turned dark. Then the messages turned obsessive. Then they became terrifying. And Cari, the real Cari, was nowhere to be found. For the next 4 years, everyone around Dave would live in a digital nightmare, watching messages flood in at all hours. Emails detailing what he was wearing, photos taken from outside his windows, threats describing where he was, who he was with, and what she wanted to do to him. He replaced his phones. He changed numbers. He switched routines. It didn't matter. The messages followed him everywhere, because the person sending them was always close enough to know exactly when to strike. By Thanksgiving, Cari had missed her own birthday. She missed Max's. Then she missed her father's funeral in December. For her mother, Nancy, these weren't just red flags. These were impossibilities. Cari didn't miss the people she loved. Not like this. Not ever. Nancy felt like she was screaming into a void. Police dismissed her concerns. They saw bipolar disorder in her medical history and decided everything made sense. But nothing made sense. Cari's grammar changed. Her punctuation disappeared. Her tone was cruel, erratic, hateful. Completely unlike the precise, thoughtful messages she normally wrote. Even Max tried to test the messages, asking questions only his mother would know. She never answered, because she couldn't. In January 2013, Dave spotted Cari's Ford Explorer parked near his apartment. That single moment could have broken the case wide open, but a fingerprint found inside didn't match Cari, and investigators never connected the dots. The case simply sat there, waiting for someone who cared enough to dig. Meanwhile, the harassment escalated. Liz's home mysteriously caught fire. Pets died. Dave's gun vanished from his apartment. Threats poured in by the tens of thousands, more than most people send in a lifetime. Fake accounts multiplied. Years passed. Cari's reputation was shredded in the town she loved. And behind it all, Liz watched, feeding flames she knew investigators weren't even trying to put out. But her confidence was premature, because in 2015, 2 investigators, Jim Doty and Ryan Avis, decided the case bothered them too much to ignore. They picked it up off the shelf. And within days, they saw what everyone else had missed. Cari wasn't alive. She wasn't sending messages. She wasn't hiding. And someone else was using her identity as a weapon. Doty and Avis didn't need advanced psychological training to recognize what was right in front of them. The digital trail was too elaborate, too relentless, and too strategic to be coming from a woman with no electronic activity, no financial movement, no physical sightings, and no confirmed interaction with anyone for over 2 years. Adults don't simply vanish into thin air and simultaneously run a full-time harassment operation from the shadows. That contradiction alone told them everything. But the key wasn't proving Cari was dead. It was proving someone else was alive and pretending to be her, that someone had been hiding in plain sight. Liz Golyar didn't seem worried when investigators circled closer. In fact, she walked right into the sheriff's office in December 2015 and filed a complaint against Dave's ex-girlfriend, accusing her of harassment. She handed investigators her phone voluntarily. If she had just left that phone at home, she might have stayed free. But confidence is a dangerous thing when built on lies. Liz believed she had outsmarted everyone, including law enforcement. She'd spent years crafting a digital labyrinth, deleting files, routing emails through third-party servers, sending timed messages to create perfect alibis. She believed she was untouchable. Within 24 hours, she shot herself in the leg at Big Lake Park and blamed the attack on Dave's ex. It was messy, badly timed. Investigators recognized self-infliction immediately, but they pretended to believe her, because sometimes the only way to catch a liar is to let them talk. And Liz talked. She kept producing messages, kept receiving threats, kept forwarding emails, kept trying to frame other people. She never realized the detectives weren't validating her. They were building a cage around her. While she tried to orchestrate her narratives, digital forensic administrator Tony Cava One of the most relentless investigators to touch this case was tearing apart her electronic footprint piece by piece. Thousands of devices, drives, emails, servers, metadata lines, deleted thumbnails, fragments of fragments. He lived inside the details, analyzing for so long that the work cost him his own health. But he didn't quit. He refused to quit. And his obsession was the only reason the truth eventually surfaced. Deep inside Liz's data, he began connecting timestamps to IP addresses, deleted caches to location records, temporary email accounts to devices she used only when she thought no one was watching. Her entire digital kingdom cracked wide open under his microscope. Then came the moment every homicide case needs, the moment where suspicion becomes irrefutable. 13 emails landed in investigative inboxes. 13 so-called confessions from Amy Flora, Dave's ex. 13 narratives describing Cari's death in detail. Stabbed 3 to 4 times, wrapped, burned, put into garbage bags. Then came the detail that changed everything. The killer mentioned a tattoo, Cari's yin-yang tattoo on her hip. A detail never released publicly. A detail only the killer, or someone who had seen Cari's body, would know. And every one of those emails traced back to Liz. The investigators already knew Cari was dead. Now they knew exactly who killed her, but they still lacked the one thing no digital trail could provide: physical proof. A murder weapon, a body, blood, something real. The break they needed came from somebody who didn't even realize he still held a key to the case. Dave, exhausted and hollow, mentioned an old tablet he had used years earlier, one Liz had full access to during their relationship. He didn't think it mattered, but he handed it over anyway. Inside the device was a memory card, filled with thousands of deleted thumbnails. Tony Cava went through them meticulously, the way you examine artifacts at a crime scene. Click. Delete fragment. Click. Restoration attempt. Click. Another scrap of data. Then he stopped. On his screen was a photograph of a foot, lifeless, pale, stilled in a way living bodies never are. And across the top of that foot, a tattoo, a Chinese symbol. Cari's tattoo, the one that meant mother. Nancy confirmed it instantly. She didn't have to think. Her daughter wore that symbol like a badge of identity. The investigators didn't break down. They didn't celebrate. They didn't pause. They simply kept going, the way investigators must when the truth emerges out of darkness. Another photo surfaced of a thigh. Another of a body part positioned unnaturally. Images prosecutors later called trophy photographs. Taken by Liz, saved by Liz, preserved by Liz, hidden but not well enough. The truth was sitting quietly inside that memory card the entire time. With this discovery, investigators conducted one final search of Cari's Ford Explorer. This time they removed the seat fabric entirely. Beneath the cushion, deep in the foam, soaked into the material, they found it. Blood. Cari's blood. DNA so conclusive, the odds of it belonging to anyone else were 1 in 100 billion. The smoking gun wasn't a weapon. It was the silence of something that should never have been silent. The blood of a missing woman, buried inside a car the whole time. On December 22, 2016, 4 years after Cari's disappearance, the truth finally caught up to its architect. Liz Golyar was arrested at her home in Persia, Iowa. The charges were severe: first-degree homicide and second-degree arson. Her bail, an extraordinary $5 million. Most people would crumble under the weight of what was coming. Liz didn't. She waived her right to a jury trial, an act of arrogant confidence. Her attorney later admitted they were hoping to push the trial forward before investigators found a body. They believed no body meant no conviction. They underestimated just how thoroughly the digital evidence had stripped Liz's alibis bare. The trial began on May 10, 2017. It ran for 10 days. Tony Cava testified for 3 days of digital forensics so detailed, so precise, so unshakable that even the defense stopped trying to dismantle it. Dave testified as well, reading out just a fraction of the 12,000 emails he received from a woman who had been dead the entire time. Nancy spoke about her daughter's tattoos, her routine, the way her messages changed overnight. She held herself together long enough to give her daughter a voice inside the courtroom. A voice the world had ignored when she first tried to sound the alarm. The defense called no witnesses. They had nothing left to stand on. 14 days later, Judge Timothy Burns delivered his verdict. Cari Farver had not disappeared voluntarily. She had not abandoned her life. She had not tormented anyone. She had been killed, executed in cold blood, and her identity twisted into a weapon of manipulation for years. Liz Golyar was found guilty of first-degree murder and second-degree arson, life without parole, plus additional years. No possibility of freedom. The courtroom erupted. Relief, rage. Nancy cried. Not just for justice, but for the restoration of her daughter's name after 4 years of false accusations, online harassment, and whispered judgments in a small town that had gotten the story wrong. She's got her name back, Nancy said. She loved life. I just wish she could have had more of it. Cari's body has never been recovered, but her story didn't end with tragedy. Her son Max grew up, graduated from Iowa State University in 2021 with a degree in software engineering, following in the footsteps of the mother who loved both technology and him with unwavering devotion. He builds applications now, the way she once did, carrying her legacy forward in ways she never got to see. The investigators who refused to walk away from the case later created the Cari Farver Memorial Scholarship Fund for IT students, honoring a woman whose story had been rewritten by someone else and then reclaimed by truth. In the end, the case of Cari Farver wasn't just about a murder. It was about identity, about how easily technology can mask a killer, about how a single moment, a 10-second passing in a hallway, can ignite an obsession that destroys lives. It was about a mother who never abandoned her son, despite the world being convinced she had. And it was about the power of persistence, how 2 investigators, an analyst, and a grieving family refused to accept the simplest explanation simply because it was convenient. You're watching this on Unsolved True Crimes, UTC. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. And if you want more deep, immersive investigations like this one, subscribe so you never miss the next story. Because stories like Cari's deserve to be told clearly, truthfully, and fully, without the noise that tried to silence them. Her name is restored. Her truth is known. And her legacy continues.